the biggest things we struggle with are really our own emotions, because we're not taught how to take care of our feelings. Like at least with my generation, most of us were just taught, don't feel those feelings, stuff it down, don't cry. No one was given a way to take care of our difficult feelings. So that ends up being some of the most important work that we do.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Hunter Clarke-Fields, who's known as the Mindful Mama Mentor. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes out of our guest's book. It's by Dennis Waitley. The greatest gifts you can give your children are the roots of responsibility and the wings of independence. We're going to chat about that today. I think we get it wrong as parents many times, and we need to let our kids take control, figure out how to fly. One part of that is giving them the financial freedom as well. Kids are a lot smarter than we think, and allowing them the space to grow, especially from 6 to 12 years old, can make the teenage years a lot more fun. Before we get to that, last week's action step was to decide on one thing you can teach and then hand it off to someone else. I have to admit, I do this with my kids as much as possible. It allows us to have better conversations, them to learn skills, and earn some money. It's kind of a double win. I'm also working out to either eliminate tasks or hire someone to take over more work for me. I just have to figure out what that looks like. I know it's going to be great, but I still struggle taking the time to let go. If you have kids, I recommend you read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's a great book about the words we use and the results they produce. It's a little counterintuitive. Now, I've said many times before, most psychology books are really parenting books, showing you how parents screw up their kids' lives. So don't do that. Today, we're going to talk about that, and it's timely, as many families are still cooped up and they need to reset the way they are operating. Hunter Clarke-Fields is a mindful mentor, host of the Mindful Mama podcast, creator of the Mindful Parenting online course, and author of the new book, Raising Good Humans. She helps parents bring more calm into their daily lives and cooperation in their families. Hunter has over 20 years of experience in meditation and yoga practices and has taught mindfulness to thousands worldwide. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Richer Soul, Hunter Clarke-Fields. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks so much, Rocky. Happy to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. Let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Growing up, I grew up in a lower middle class household. My dad was an artist and sign maker, making carved wooden signs. And my mom was a nurse. She worked some nights. So I don't know. I think school taught me about the regular bits about money. I learned from my family that my father tended to think that has real strong opinions about wealthy people being not very good people in the world, and has a kind of class chip on his shoulder. And so I learned those were some voices I had to excavate from my head as I started going into a business. And but I also learned some other things, which was that I was really active and did a lot of things. And I used to I lived in a small town, and I could roller skate to the 5 and 10 shop very easily. So I used to roller skate to the 5 and 10 shop and use my money to buy blueberry bubblegum and other things. But I also learned how to earn money at a very young age. I walked a dog for $5 a week. I walked that dog every day, which sounds amazing now. Good thing I liked walking the dog. And I had my first actual job where I was a maid at a bed and breakfast when I was 12 years old. So I started working really young, doing jobs beyond babysitting and stuff, because I really was very determined to, kind of get the things I wanted in life. So I guess I learned that, I could make things happen too. I don't know about school. It's kind of like a blank slate as far as it goes with the money education.
And I think that's always the case. It's not surprising. So it sounded like you had to work to get over the mindset that rich people weren't evil.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I can very clearly remember Dad saying rich people were a-holes. And he had a little bit of a victim mentality. Now I think about his business, and now I'm just I think about the profitability of his business, and I kind of cringe. But yeah, I did have to work to get over that, because as I started going into a business and coaching women and creating my course and then making the membership and things like that, I'm in a helping and healing space. I teach mindful parenting, and it's amazing. And I also know that people don't get a lot out of it if I give it away for free. There's not a lot of value there, and they get more out of it when they invest more, and it really is in the space of parenting, a slightly higher end experience than most. And I really had to overcome some mindset blocks about charging for something that, that is really, I think, important for all people to learn. And also for me to be able to grow my business and invest in my team and, all the different things. I did have to get over the idea that rich people are not very good people, because how could I then, it's interesting if you think about my subconscious, right? How could I earn money if I thought my dad was going to think I was a jerk? Then all of a sudden, if I had more money, I would be subconsciously sabotaging myself. So I really had to work with that. And one of my big role models is Oprah, of course, who does lots of great work and in a very helping and healing space. And is not afraid to make herself some money.
No, she isn't. And that's one thing that I tell people is, if you have these money mindsets and you think rich people are evil, then you're going to do your best not to be rich. And money doesn't change people in that. These people were bad to begin with. The money had nothing to do with their underlying behaviors, unfortunately.
I can only agree. I think it really does magnify, whatever you're into and what your values are. And I thought about this recently, and I realized that the whole idea on certain corners that, if you want to earn money, it's evil is really, really detrimental, because it means that those who focus on earning wealth and things like that are more often those who are not maybe focused on like maybe policies that benefit all rather than just themselves, are not maybe what I really want is I want people like me. Like I would love to have, personally, I want universal health care. I want policies that lift everybody up. I'm willing to pay more taxes for a world in which everybody is happier and healthier, like kind of like they have it in, like they have in Scandinavia or whatever, right? Where everybody has more safety nets. And I think that if people who have the values of wanting to lift everybody up, then are, also focused on earning more wealth, then they'd have more power in that, more, amplification of that message in that corner. Whereas right now, the idea that if you pursue wealth, it's like evil or something, it's actively detrimental to those things. So I've kind of come around to a different point of view.
And it takes time, and you'll see as we go through the conversation. As I was preparing for this, I was like, money mindsets and parent mindsets go very, very close together. And the way we raise our kids is the way that we were raised. And if we don't question that raising, and we don't question those mindsets and how things were done, then sometimes we're not doing the best things for our kids and for our wallet. So have you done anything different to teach your kids about money?
Yeah, I mean, for them, what I've done is I've made sure they have a pretty good allowance. They earn half their age in dollars a week, or is it a week? Yeah, I think it's a week. And so they have like a little, like a kid's credit card kind of deal, where a certain percentage goes into donate, a certain goes into spend, a certain goes into save automatically. And they can also borrow with an interest rate against the bank of mom and dad. So they have some resources to spend. I do want them to be, I did really want to stop my daughter's allowance at 14, who just turned 14 last week. But unfortunately, she's turned 14 in a pandemic. She has like zero income generating opportunities. Like she can't babysit. She can't go get a, job. There's like it's like dangerous to do all of the things. So we've kind of extended that a little bit longer. I mean, I think what I've tried to give my kids the mindset, rather than the limiting mindset of there's not enough of anything, I've always tried to answer that question of, that yes, we can afford whatever we want to afford. It just is a matter of where our priorities are, right? Like if we want to, if you want us to buy you a horse, then maybe we have to live on some rice and beans for a little while. We could afford it, but it's not our priority right now. And so that question of when it comes down to finances has always been a question of like, yes, we can do whatever we want to do, but we make certain choices, and these are why we make these choices. And so I want them to have a mindset that anything is possible. And, we can figure it out. Everything is figure outable. We just got to figure out how we can do those things. So I'm trying to help them have that mindset.
And we did something similar with the allowance. I did give my kids their age in allowance every week. So a little bit more, but then we stopped paying for certain things. So it was then their responsibility to take overpayment if they wanted those types of treats. And then we gave them the freedom to do it. And we did pay them till they were 18. I guess that is a question, do you stop early? Do you go to 18? And part of it, I think, was we were always running so much that it was hard for them to necessarily get a job. If they got a job and I had to drive them there and pick them up, because we're a little bit more rural, you can't walk.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't worth it for me. I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. So
no,
you find a balance.
It's like the paper route, right? Where the mom drives. It's like crazy. No, we live like within a mile and a half, 2 miles of a bunch of different businesses. And my oldest daughter, she still very, very much has this on the mind. She's wants to look into lifeguarding at our local pool. And she has some standards that when I was 14, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts at the end of my street, and it was like a great job. Like I learned a lot at Dunkin' Donuts and ate way too many donuts, but yeah, they would never want to work at Dunkin' Donuts, I think.
When I was young, my friend's dad owned a Dunkin' Donuts, so I got to go make the donuts occasionally.
It was fun, right? We used to have these. It was a whole our whole store was owned by a Portuguese family, and they had the Portuguese bakers in the back, and they would make on Easter. They would make us all big loaves of bunny bread made out of the donut dough. Oh. It was so nice.
Yeah, that's the reason I got fat.
Oh, no.
I had to stop the sugar and reset myself. And we didn't realize how bad those things were back then. But now I'm much, much better. So let's kind of take a step backward. What was it like during your early days of parenting?
It was really, really very hard. I had this idea of how I wanted to be. I wanted to be this calm mother. I wanted to be, really present for my kids or child at that point. And, I had recently started meditating. And so I remember being at this, like in this meditation circle with my big pregnant belly and thinking like, oh yeah, like I got this. This kid's going to be so calm. This is going to be amazing. And she was so intense from the very beginning. So she's a lot like me and a lot like my father, and that, we just have this like intense energy, highly sensitive people. And she was super intense, fussy baby in a lot of ways, and just sensitive to a lot of things. And then when she started walking and talking, this temper came out of me, like, with the, resisting my requests. And it was like this incredible temper came out, and I could see very clearly that it was my father's temper. It was the same temper that he had that scared me when I was a kid. It was exactly what I didn't want, precisely what I didn't want to give her. I could see I was scaring her. So it was incredibly hard. We're just not prepared for that. I think, you have so little sleep, you have so little resources, but I remember after, a bit of time, like wallowing in some tears, feeling like, okay, well, what do I have to learn from this? What do I have to learn? So it really drove me into this period of like intensive study to kind of understand how I could do better. And what I found that was really interesting for me was that, I had been learning all these I would learn all these kind of good things to say, like parenting teachers would say, like, just respond this way, right? And everything will be fine. And then as I was getting frustrated and as I was getting activated, my nervous system was getting activated by the difficult situations, all those good things to say just went right out the window completely. And I really realized that all those good things to say are as good as useless if you have nothing, if you aren't able to calm your reactivity, because literally the, fight, flight, or freeze stress response is literally kind of cutting off access to your whole brain. So I found out that, I really needed the tools and habits to study the heart, the mind, and the nervous system, paired then with the communication, and one without the other wasn't enough.
It takes a lot of different parts that come together, and the words that we use and the way that we do it definitely changes the way that the kids react. I remember when the kids were real little and they were learning to walk, if they would fall over, if you would freak out, they would freak out. If you would laugh, they would laugh. And just learning to be able to, again, you've got to control your reactions in the moment, because kids are really good at knowing hypocrisy, and they're really good at poking parents to get what they want. Somehow they have that innate talent within them from birth. Not sure where it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, there are also kids are really great doing what you do, not doing what you say. So what happens with a lot of parents is that our kids start to grow, and then we start to see our own words and behavior reflected back at us, and we're like, oh no, that's what I sound like. Oh, right. And yet it really is so true that our own ability to be calm and present and grounded in our whole body-mind system, that is really the most important thing that matters for so many reasons. When your kids are little, like you said, they regulate their own emotions through us, right? So if they're upset and we meet their upsetness with more upsetness, it just magnifies the whole thing. But if we can stay calm and grounded and steady, that helps to soothe them. So this becomes this really important work. And that's what mindfulness practice does so well. It really helps you build a muscle of non-reactivity, of groundedness, of calm and presence, right? And we make this mistake as parents where we think, oh, I can just choose to be calm, or I can just choose to be calm and not be upset, which is a really dumb idea, frankly. Not that I haven't had it, but it is a really silly idea, this belief in this innate belief in our willpower, because the thing is, it's like the moment where your kid's having some big, intense feelings, it's kind of like the big game for you, right? And you wouldn't send your kid into the Little League World Series without ever having her go to a coach and have practices and build muscle memory and learn some plays and all that stuff. You would never send her into the World Series without practicing. And that's what we think we can do, is we can go into a very difficult situation and just respond the way we think we'd like to respond without any practice. And we're fooling ourselves.
And we do that a lot in a variety of areas, not just parenting. And so it takes time to build that muscle. And unfortunately, kids don't come with a manual, and they're all a little different. And so you've got to figure out what makes your kid tick and then kind of adjust how you do things to that. I know my son is the rebel, so it was much harder when he was little. He didn't care about certain things. If you'd smack his hand, he'd look at you and go, "Is that the best you got?" And so it's you have to figure them out and then how to appropriately react to them. And it's a process. I think we were lucky in the sense that we were living 3 generations in the household. So we didn't have to be full time on. There was always help. And that really made things a lot easier. And so if the parents are upset at you, you go hang out with grandma. If grandma's upset at you, you go hang out with one of the parents. And I think it made it easier on the kids, too. But we also had a lot of limits. I mean, when my kids were little, we did not allow them to just watch TV or just watch anything or do anything. We were much more intentional in that your job is to learn. And so we're going to give you plenty of opportunities to learn educational types of things. And so we were always focused on that and giving them experiences, showing them the world, and then also trying to put them in situations before they were ready to remove the fear. So for whatever reason, I just remember when the kids are little, kids have a fear of the toilet. They have a fear of the shower. We would just put them in it months before it would be even expected so that you kind of removed all the fear from them. And we try and look at life through their eyes and what they're experiencing. I think the biggest lesson was when I'm teaching T-ball, it was learning how to speak in a way that they do. So, everyone screaming about run home. And one of the coaches was telling the story about this kid who literally ran home because that's what he thought he was supposed to do. So it's being intentional and mindful of the words you're using. And then beyond that, it's teaching them how to do things at their level. Because too often we we know it so well that we can't explain it in a way that they can understand and learn.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, we have to think of ourselves as coaches and teachers, and that I think that's really, if you think about the word discipline, that's really kind of at the root of that word. Like the root of the word discipline is the same root as the word disciple, and someone who follows a teacher, right? And so if you think about that, discipline is really about teaching our kids what can we do to meet your needs. That is not that thing. Maybe that was not the skillful thing, the unskillful thing that you did. But like if you are frustrated with your sister and you're so angry, what can you do rather than whack your sister on the head, right? Like it's really about teaching, giving our kids skills. Our kids aren't, are different from dogs. We tend to use tools that are like sort of behaviorists, like our Pavlov and his dogs. And that can sort of like quote unquote, like work in a immediate sense, but it has a high price to pay. And that really, when we think of our kids, when we think of ourselves as like coaches and teachers, it really is much more effective in the long run, because truly the thing that makes our kids want to cooperate with us is their connection to us, right? Is their care and connection to us. And if we parent in such a way that they resist and resent us, then we're eroding that influence over time.
That is so true. If you have disrespectful teenagers, it's what you taught them. And so be careful what you teach them, because you will get what you teach. So we're here today to talk about your book. What inspired you to write the book, Raising Good Humans?
The book comes out of my mindful parenting course and membership. The 8 chapters mimic the 8 modules that we go through in mindful parenting. And it really comes out of, I had been working with women and coaching women. And what I realized is like, I was actually reading a book where it was asking that question, if money were no object, what would you create? And so I said, I would create a course that brings together mindfulness and all that internal work to take care of our feelings and stuff with the skillful communication stuff that all these other people teach. I'd bring these together, because one without the other doesn't work. Like it's great to be calm, but then if you then say something to your child that maybe was some unskillful language of your parents, and then they explode again like a ticking time bomb, that's no so skillful. And if you are so reactive, you can't access that language, that's not so great either, right? So they really do need to be paired together, right? Those habits, those calming reactivity habits, and then those communication skills to express ourselves honestly and effectively. So it really comes from working with other parents and working with my own kids, and really putting it together into a system that, that really walks people through step by step. Here's how we calm down our hearts and minds and get some clear seeing. Not that hard. And walking people through that inner work of understanding what are those things that trigger you, taming that inner voice that can be really mean and harsh, right? That always eventually comes out with your kids. And then how to speak in such a way that creates connection. So, it really is kind of it all comes together in a really beautiful way there. And it is my life's work, I feel like.
And I very much enjoyed the book. I liked that it was full of a lot of stories, and it was also full of action items. So it gave you practical steps that you could take to work with your kids. Was there a favorite story of yours in the book?
I don't know. There's so many,
There were. It was full of stories.
I mean, a lot of them come from my clients, which is so cool. one of my favorite stories, and I don't know if it's in the book or not, they all get a little confused in my head though, was someone I worked with the tools of mindful parenting. And she is like a busy nurse with like this adopted daughter who's like, I guess she was like 11 or 12 at the time. And she has reactive attachment disorder. And it's been really intense. And she had been in therapy for 5 years for this reactive attachment disorder and had been doing all these different things and really ended up turning her whole relationship with her daughter around using the tools that we did in mindful parenting. And to me, it was like, oh my gosh, so she said that to me, like, this was more effective and better for me than 5 years of therapy. And I was like, wow, this is exciting. And so, yeah, my next step is to really think about getting clinical studies, which I'd really like to do.
Ah, interesting. One of the things I've always said, and I talk about, is we as parents need to learn persuasion and selling skills. Because if you want to work with these kids, they're very good at, like, they've just got this ability to just grind you down when they want something. And you've got to learn to kind of use these skills to be able to get what you want without having to spend so much time. We always love the word because. When you give an action and then you add the word because and you give a reason, kids are more likely to comply with what you want them to do because they understand the purpose of it. It's not you just asking them to do something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like there's a great example of some skillful communication that I saw once in the art museum. In the art museum, they don't want you to touch anything. Do not touch, right? And I saw this great example of that where it was like the circle no sign with a hand, but it said touching damages the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just so much more effective, right? To say, oh, this is the effect of this action. So, what it does, it draws on people's intrinsic desire to cooperate. There's not any carrot or stick happening. It's like, oh, because you care. And that's really the most powerful way to create cooperation.
So true. I noticed one of the things that you said is that it's better to act as a helper rather than a problem solver. And I think we have too many helicopter parents these days. And I still because I'm on these college chat boards with the other parents, and it just amazes me. These kids are living on their own and how much their parents are trying to solve their problems. You got to let go. So why do you think it's better to be a helper rather than a problem solver?
In the colleges, they're seeing the effects of that, right? I talked to Julie Lithcott-Haynes on my Mindful Mama podcast, and she was talking about how in the colleges they had started to think of these generation of kids as like teacup kids, like they're fragile little teacups that can be broken so easily because they haven't had any challenges in their life and any problems that they've had to solve because of the whole helicopter or snowplow parenting. I mean, it really does our kids a huge disservice to solve all their problems. I mean, yeah, when they're infants, you got to solve all the problems. But pretty soon, even when a kid's 2, you don't have to solve all their problems. They may come to you with a problem. Oh, so-and-so, my brother took my toy, blah, blah, blah. And you don't have to be the judge and the jury to solve that problem. You can just be the helper. Oh, and by helping, all we need to do is to acknowledge what's happening and really see and hear our children. Oh, that stinks. I hate to have my things stolen. That doesn't feel very good at all. And, our kids, as we just talk to them and become a helper rather than the one who solves the problems, they solve their own problems. It's really amazing. And so it empowers kids to become a helper. And it's also empowering for parents to realize that you don't have to solve all the problems. And it really does, it's like a vote of no confidence in your kid's ability if you always solve all their problems.
And that's true. If you solve their problems, then they become of the mindset they either aren't capable or you create the mindset in them that you don't think they're capable, both of which aren't going to help us. And so you have to let them do these things, and it has to be appropriate. I mean, it's not, you do it over time, little by little. You have to learn to let go of the reins, and depending on the problem and how big it is and how old they are, you have to approach it differently for each age group, and you have to learn to continue to let go.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's always a process of letting go. And I love the kind of process of learning that that is helpful, that I write about in Raising Good Humans. Like first you do it for them, then you do it with them, then you hang out with them while they do it, and then they do it. Right. So it's not like it's, the throwing the kid into the pool method. It's like there's a scaffolding there. But yeah, we don't have to, it really is freeing to not solve all our kids' problems.
It is. And then you can let go. You can go live your life too and enjoy some of the other things. And this way they're not moving back in at, 27 and living in your basement. Nobody ever wants that. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man Podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man Podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. Writing a book is a long process, and then the book comes out, and that whole process takes time. What have you learned since the book has come out?
An interesting question. Since the book has come out, I guess I've learned even a little more confidence in the whole mindful parenting method than I even had before. It's been so exciting to hear people's stories about what's been happening with the book, but also in the membership and what's been happening. But I've learned a lot about the process of releasing a book. I never thought I would. I had an affirmation on my phone from 3 or 4 years before the book came out, before I even had an idea for a book or a book proposal that said, "Congratulations, you are a published author." and lo and behold, it came true, which was very exciting. I was able to make that happen. I think I've learned it's mostly more about the process of talking about the book. I've learned a lot about talking about the story in the book.
And that is a process, because once the book comes out, they put you on tour and you've got to go run around. And it's like, people don't realize this. Writing the book is only the first step, and it's a very teeny part of the entire process. Selling the book takes 5x the work of writing the book and going out and promoting it. It's I know many authors, and it's eye-opening to a lot of them how much has to kind of go on after the book comes out and it's finally published.
Yeah, it is interesting, but it's been exciting for me because apparently Raising Good Humans has done much better than New Harbinger expected. They weren't sure about putting it in audiobook at first. I said, I have a podcast. We have to put it in audiobook. And they're like, I don't know, Hunter. And then it came out in audiobook, but they forgot to tell me. I found out a few months later when someone shared it on Instagram. And now they're doing a hardcover copy after a softcover copy, which I think is so interesting. So, it's been a really exciting process.
Did they have you record it, or did someone else record it for you?
No, it's not me, which is in some ways like so weird to hear this other person like reading the book, because I do the podcast, right? I'm sure it must be even strange for the podcast listeners, but I know that's a lot of work. So on the other hand, I'm a little happy I got spared that.
So what's the biggest struggle? You have the membership group. What's the biggest struggle that you see people coming to you with?
It really is our reactivity. Especially moms are one of the biggest things I see that they struggle with is giving themselves time and that like guilt that people have. We have this like really insidious, like mommy martyr idea in our culture that the self-sacrificing woman is to be upheld in this, it's like noble to self-sacrifice. And it makes me bananas because it's like, not only is it bad for the mom who's self-sacrificing and not meeting any of her needs, but then she's crap as a parent because she's not meeting any of her needs and can't, show up fully and wholeheartedly because she isn't giving herself enough. So that is one of the biggest things that I see that people struggle with. So it's, I'm in a constant process of helping people understand that no, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's actually your responsibility. That's how we get to show up in the world.
So true. Just out of curiosity, do you get a lot of dads?
We do get dads. The dads are often with the moms. They're not, what happens is people can join together. You can bring a parenting partner with you. So the dads are often with the moms. The dads have not been solo in the membership yet.
Interesting. And that's one of the things I'm seeing societally is fathers are not doing a good job raising their kids. They've kind of stepped away from the process for whatever reason, and they're not involved enough in their kids' lives. And I don't know if it's always been like that, or what's changed. But if the dads aren't involved, that creates a whole nother set of problems. And so I encourage you, if you're a dad, get involved in your kids' lives and be part of it. You play an important role.
Yes. It makes such a huge difference. I mean, for boys and girls to have strong, compassionate, caring men in their lives, it really makes a huge difference.
That it does. So my kids grew up as screens became more available, but we were lucky to kind of be before the curve for the most part. Have you seen a lot more issues now because kids are on their screens all day long?
Oh, for sure. I mean, with the pandemic, it's probably like the number one thing we're dealing with again and again and again in so many families, because school's on the screen and then none of the kids are outside. So their friends are on the screen too, on their Minecraft game or playing Among Us or whatever, right? It's huge. I'm don't know how all this will play out. I mean, it is personally a struggle in our house. I know it's a struggle with many of my, friends. It's a struggle with families in the mindful parenting membership, because it's kind of like when people have a food addiction, right? Because you have to have some access to it. And then it's this like addictive thing that, you got the whole world there on this thing in your pocket. And when you go outside, it may not be so interesting, even if it's healthier for you. So it's a big frustration right now. Huge.
Like I said, we were lucky. By the time they became much more prevalent, my kids were older, and so they had already formed better habits. And we didn't limit screen time because they had computers and their computers were just full of educational games. We limited TV time. But again, that was a different time than it is today, even though my kids aren't that old. And they're talking about that generationally, kind of the kids pre and post, even though they're part of the same generation, there's a difference between the younger ones versus the ones that are slightly older than them.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be talking about the effects of this pandemic for a long time, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I guess my kids lucked out because of the way they finished high school. They were actually doing a lot of online learning prior to COVID. And so they were comfortable and working in that environment. Both of my kids were taking those types of online classes. So COVID hasn't caused them to struggle because they were used to that kind of an environment and flipping in and out of it. But they weren't on the screen all day like that. I think that's where the problem comes in. When they were taking online classes, they only had to be on the screen for a much shorter period of time. You were focused, you got your stuff done, and you bolted. Not like today where you're just sitting there all day long. It's a waste of time to spend that much time. Kids can learn a lot faster if you let them. And then again, it's coming back to giving kids permission and letting them do things. What's the biggest mistake that you see parents making and struggling to kind of stop?
Well, the biggest struggle that people come to me with is yelling. Most parents who come to me know that they're not going to spank their kids. They know they're not going to do that. I saw that someone talked about spanking as basically state-sanctioned domestic violence. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's basically what it is, right? And so we know that, physical punishment is not such a great thing. But we also have, we also yell, we get frustrated, and we can see that yelling scares our kids. We can see that, and we know actually from that it turns on their fight, flight, or freeze stress response, which actually cuts off their ability to learn. So kids aren't learning anything when they're being yelled at. All that's happening is they're creating future resistance and resentment for the relationship. It's kind of undermining the relationship. So in the Mindful Parenting membership, we have a whole stop yelling formula, a practice where we, use the power of practice in envisioning the alternative responses to yelling and practicing to calm that stress response. I think that, and understanding what is triggering us. A lot of times it's not even the situation. Like I had a client who had, her toddler spilling juice on the floor. Well, toddlers spill juice on the floor. Like that's not such a big deal. Here's how we get a sponge and clean it up. She knew all that, but it was making her react in this incredibly intense way. She could feel that in her body, and she did some of that work that we do to understand that, and in her own, looking back into her own childhood, and really saw that like she was raised with this idea that the appearances had to be perfect, had to be just so, everything had to be just so, and that was a value judgment on who she was as a person. If the appearances weren't so, in the state of her house and home. And so that was triggering this much deeper, stuff for her about her own value. And so she had to kind of work through all that and start to see that. So it really is, the biggest things we struggle with are really our own emotions, because we're not taught how to take care of our feelings. Like at least with my generation, most of us were just taught, don't feel those feelings, stuff it down, don't cry. No one was given a way to take care of our difficult feelings. So that ends up being some of the most important work that we do.
And I grew up where you were just told to toughen up. And you're right. The emotions weren't allowed to be, you just have to buck it up, tough up, and get it done. And that was the way it was. And I guess that is changing. Little by little, things do get better. Are you seeing parents being super stressed? Like in my world, there's no stress. So I don't see it as much, but it sounds like parents are pretty stressed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially during this pandemic, this is incredibly hard on parents. I mean, whether you have, even if you have all the resources in the world, it's incredibly hard, it's just so unnatural, I think, for like one or two adult human beings to spend like 24/7 with like a 3-year-old or 2-year-old, or forget, like I have a client who had triplet 3-year-olds, and multiple kids under 5. I mean, it just is, we didn't evolve this way because kids are a lot of work, and we were pretty separate as it was before. But now with the pandemic, we're so separate and we have no breaks. And it is really incredibly hard on parents, especially on moms. Moms are like losing their jobs because of the pandemic, and having to deal with, all of the 24/7 constant childcare. So it has been a very, very stressful time.
Yeah, I guess being out of that place, I haven't seen, you're just not in that world. You tend to forget. And because my kids were older, it wasn't an issue. But I've got to imagine if you've got young kids, or if you're both working and your kids are in grade school, with the grade school closed, you can't leave a 8-year-old at home all day. So one parent's going to have to figure out, or between the parents figure out, how to be able to take care of them. And that is very much of a struggle. I think it's important to sit back and think about, how can you make the change? Like, what is it that you truly want? And then take the time to figure out how you can get there. Opportunities are there, but too often if you're stuck in that grind, you can't see those things. And it comes back to what you're talking about. Being mindful is slowing down, so that we say this in business all the time. You have to work on the business, not in the business. And I think the same thing is probably true for parents. You have to get out of that moment of just being in the grind of your family and think about the bigger picture, and then pivot your life and figure it out. Things are possible, but you've got to breathe, which is basically what mindfulness is, right? Taking the time to breathe and be present in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're right. There are more possibilities than we realize if we if we have some time to step back and do it. And that makes me think of another mistake that parents make all the time. And that is like, we're in a very individualistic culture, and it's like the whole DIY, the DIY approach, I'm the one who I wrote a book, and I love my book, and I believe in my book. And I know that someone who reads the book is not going to get the same results as somebody who gets the support of others, gets coaching, gets guidance, and who they're going to have the person with the coaching and the guidance and the community. They're going to go, they're going to go faster. They're going to go farther. They're going to go deeper. Right. And so parents, we have this idea that we have to do it all. Parenting should just be instinctual, and I should just know how to do this by myself. And I call BS because it's not instinctual. What you think of as instincts are really conditioned responses from your own childhood and your own culture. And you don't have to do it all on your own. Like, you're right, Rocky. Like, there's a place of stepping back and looking at it and saying, oh, if I force myself to think of like, this is what I'm needing right now, and I force myself to think of 10 possible solutions to this need rather than just the one and then giving up, then there's a lot more possibility out there than I realize.
And that there is. So the one thing we always like to do is to give people an action step. What is something people can do this week to maybe move forward with their parenting?
Sure. I think that thinking about what we talked about, I would invite people to spend, set a timer for 5 minutes, sit on the floor with their kids or wherever, sit wherever with their kids, and just spend some time with no agenda, nothing to do, and just bring an attitude of curiosity to this moment. So we didn't talk a lot about what mindfulness is and how to practice, but one of the things mindfulness is bringing an attitude of kindness and curiosity. It's the opposite of judgment. So can you spend 5 minutes and say to yourself, who are you right now? As if you've never met your child before, as if you've been beamed down into your body and you're really interested and curious about who is this person? And that way you can really be present, you can really listen, and really bring some fresh looking to some moments with your kid. Do that for 5 days this week. I guarantee you're going to have a different experience by the end of the week.
And that is very true. I see, for me, like, having kids was, I get to be a kid again and go have fun and play. So I was always on the ground doing different things and having fun and doing the things that I wish I would have been able to do when I was a kid, which meant we ended up with toys that they didn't really care about sometimes because daddy wanted it. But that's okay.
I love that, Rocky. That's awesome.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Appreciation. I mean, looking around you and seeing, if you look around your life right now and you can find 3 things that you appreciate. I mean, I've got 2 hands that can hold my children and hug and do things. I've got a strong body. I can see a myriad of colors out of my eyes. Like, that's amazing. So if we can tap into the power of appreciation and fresh looking at things as a beginner, it can really transform our experience of life and see all that the abundance that there is in all of our lives.
And it's the simple things that we don't even think about. Like, we're not thankful for our hands, right? But without hands, tie your hands behind your back, try and get through today. Not so easy. We need to be more thankful for these smaller things in life instead of looking for all this big stuff.
So I heard this yesterday, and I thought this was such an important thing to think about, that there's going to be a last time we do everything, right? There's going to be a last time I open up my computer and look at Skype and talk to someone. There's going to be a last time I type an email. There's going to be a last time I walk into my office, right? So this is not, it's not to not take it for granted is just realistic, but it also gives us this sense of like abundance and appreciation.
And with kids, there's a lot more last times.
Yeah.
Especially as they go through the ages. You get a lot of last times. And some of them are pleasurable. Like the last time I had to change a diaper.
Yes. Hallelujah. Get that bucket car seat out of there. I was so thrilled. But yeah, there's a last time, I have a 14-year-old now. There's a last time your like 10-year-old snuggles with you, really wants to snuggle up, right? And you don't know it when that moment is. You don't know which one it is, but it's going to happen.
I don't know. My 18-year-old still crawls into our bed.
I love that. That's awesome. Maybe she'll come back around when she's 18.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
I guess I learned, I started studying mindfulness when I was a teenager and when I was 17. And I finally, 27 doesn't count as later in life. But when I was 27, I was able to actually practice. And I wish I had practiced sooner because it would have made such a big difference for me being able to enjoy all those years in my 20s that were pretty great. I think I learned later in life that, and I'm going to quote, attribute this to Marie Forleo. I really love her quote that everything is figure-outable. And I had so much doubt for so long. I wish I had learned that everything was figure-outable and had more faith in that earlier.
And that is very true. Everything is figure-outable. It's funny. They don't teach us money in school and they don't teach us life.
No, they don't.
It's
crazy.
A shame. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
I guess it would be to meditate, to practice, to calm your reactivity and to be able to sit with all the stuff that comes up for you. And I guess I would, one of the things that the pieces of wisdom that comes along with that I would be wanting to give that 18-year-old is that, to be curious, to not think that you know everything, to be curious and open-minded to seeing what's new and what's really real without so much judgment.
Most 18-year-olds know everything. Good luck with that one.
I know. Yeah, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
If people would like to find out about your book, your membership site, and your other work, what is the best way for people to find you and connect?
You can go to mindfulmamamentor.com. You'll learn about the Mindful Parenting membership there. You can get on the wait list. And Raising Good Humans is anywhere you can find books, and the audiobook is there. And everything is at mindfulmamamentor.com. If you want the behind the scenes, go to Instagram at mindfulmamamentor. And of course, the podcast. Sorry, you're a podcast listener, dear podcast listener. I know that because you're listening right now. So you may enjoy the Mindful Mama podcast. We have over 260 episodes as we record this. So lots of a whole host of great stuff there, anywhere podcasts are found.
And that is cool. Like when the kids were younger, I wish there was a lot more of this material. I went searching everywhere. I couldn't find anything. And today there is an abundance of it. So there's no excuse why you can't find the information to help you live a better life. So I encourage you to go check it out. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you so much, Rocky. It's really been a pleasure.
I probably don't share as much about this now that my kids are older, but I was always very involved in their lives. One, because I knew we wanted to create generational wealth. And two, because being a kid is fun, and I got to do it again with my kids the way I wanted it to be. Enjoy the journey, because in a blink, they are 18 and out the door. This week's action step, spend 5 minutes for 5 days with your kid and be curious and kind and ask, who is this child of mine? I highly encourage you to listen to your kids and to talk to them at their level. That doesn't mean talking down to them, but helping them understand life and money. These are the two skills they don't teach in school. We've always focused on helping our kids with their schoolwork over the summer and allowing them to gain strength so that when they come back in the fall, they are smarter than when they left in the spring, which is the exact opposite of what most kids get. They take time off and they forget, and then they have to go over everything again. I got to tell you, that small difference compounded massively over the years. And while the kids may not have liked it in the moment, they have come back and said, thank you. I know mine have. If you have kids and you found today's episode helpful, go ahead and check out Hunter's book and her podcast and her website and see what additional help she might be able to provide for you. Next week on the podcast, we have on Sally Wolf to talk about building resilience. And we're also going to chat about how valuable an Ivy League education really is. It's quite insightful. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it and don't hesitate to tag me when you do. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.